When people think about wealth in America, they picture Wall Street titans, tech moguls, or oil barons. They imagine boardrooms in Manhattan, Silicon Valley startups, or Texas drilling operations. But there's a different kind of empire that most Americans never see, never think about, and rarely understand. It's built not on stock options or petroleum rights, but on something far more powerful: faith. And the numbers are staggering. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints owns an estimated $124 billion in assets. That's more than the GDP of most countries, more than Nike, Starbucks, and American Express combined. They control vast ranches larger than entire states, shopping centers that anchor American suburbs, and investment portfolios that would make hedge fund managers weep with envy. This isn't just religious success. This is financial domination on a scale that redefines what we think we know about power in America. But here's what makes this story fascinating. The Mormon Church didn't start wealthy. It started broke, despised, and driven from town to town by mobs who wanted its members dead. So how did a persecuted religious minority, founded by a farm boy in rural New York, become the richest church in the wealthiest nation on earth? The answer isn't luck. It isn't miracles. It's a system so methodical, so disciplined, and so relentless that it turned poverty into prosperity across generations. And if you think this is just ancient history, think again. Mormon wealth isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. Every year, billions more flow into church coffers through a financial machine, the precision of a multine that operates with Ational Corporation and advantages the tax of a religious institution. The implications stretch far beyond Sunday services. This is about influence, about political power, about an economic force that shapes everything, from real estate markets to presidential elections. Let me give you the scope. The Mormon Church owns more farmland than any other private entity in America. They control shopping malls where millions of Americans spend their money every weekend. Their investment arm manages funds larger than most sovereign wealth accounts. And all of it, every single dollar, operates tax-free. This isn't just about religion. This is about the most successful wealth-building operation in American history, disguised as a church. The story begins in 1830, when Joseph Smith founded the church in a log cabin in upstate New York. But Smith wasn't just a prophet. He was an economic visionary who understood something that most religious leaders miss entirely. Money isn't evil. Money is power. And power, when, can transform, not wielded correctly, just individuals, but entire civilizations. From the very beginning, Mormon doctrine didn't just promise spiritual salvation, it promised material prosperity. Smith introduced a concept that would become the foundation of Mormon wealth: the law of tithing. Every member was required to give 10% of their income to the church, not suggested, required. This wasn't charity or a voluntary donation. It was a commandment backed by the promise of divine blessings for compliance and spiritual consequences for refusal. In one stroke, Smith created a revenue stream that would grow automatically as his membership expanded. But tithing was just the beginning. Smith also established what he called the United Order, a communal economic system where members would consecrate their property to the church and receive back what they needed to live. In theory, it was about equality and shared prosperity. In practice, it was the first step towards centralizing Mormon wealth under church control. The experiment didn't last long in its pure form, but the principle survived. Individual Mormon success was church success, and church success was individual blessing. When Smith was killed by a mob in Illinois in 1844, the church faced its greatest crisis. Members were scattered, persecuted, and financially devastated. Most religious movements would have collapsed. But Smith's successor, Brigham Young, had a different vision. Instead of retreating, he would build an empire, and he would build it in the one place where no one else wanted to go: the desert. Young led thousands of Mormon pioneers across the plains to Utah territory, a barren wasteland that most Americans considered worthless. But Young saw opportunity where others saw desolation. He understood that isolation could be turned into independence, and independence could be turned into wealth. The Mormons wouldn't just survive in the desert, they would own it. The first step was water. In the arid West, water meant life, and life meant power. Young organized massive irrigation projects that turned desert valleys into farmland. But these weren't just community efforts. They were business ventures. The church controlled the water rights, the land distribution, and the agricultural output. Settlers who wanted to farm had to work within the Mormon system, paying fees and following rules that enriched the central organization. Young also understood retail. Salt Lake City became the supply hub for westward migration, with church-owned stores selling everything from tools to food to ammunition. Travelers heading to California goldfields had to stop in Mormon territory, And when they did, they paid Mormon prices for Mormon goods. The church collected tolls on roads, operated ferries across rivers, and charged fees for services that travelers desperately needed. Every transaction strengthened Mormon control and filled church treasuries. But the real genius was in the system itself. Young didn't just build businesses. He built a culture where business success and religious devotion were inseparable. Mormon men were called to serve missions, but they were also expected to build enterprises that would support the community. Success in commerce wasn't worldly corruption. It was spiritual duty. Profit wasn't greed, it was stewardship. This mindset created a generation of Mormon entrepreneurs who saw no conflict between making money and serving God. The church also pioneered what would later be called vertical integration. They didn't just grow crops. They built mills to process them, stores to sell them, and banks to finance the entire operation. Mormon cooperatives controlled every step of production and distribution, keeping profits within the community and minimizing dependence on outside suppliers. When non-Mormon merchants tried to compete, they found themselves locked out of a closed economic system that preferred to do business with its own members. This isolation bred something remarkable. While other American communities struggled with economic uncertainty, Mormon settlements developed an almost unshakable financial stability. But it wasn't just about survival, it was about expansion. Young recognized that true wealth comes not from hoarding resources, but from multiplying them through strategic investment and calculated risk. The church began acquiring land on a scale that few Americans understood. Not just farms or small parcels, but entire valleys, mountain ranges, and river systems. They purchased territory when it was cheap and worthless, then developed it into productive assets through Mormon labor and engineering. The key was patience. While speculators flipped properties for quick profits, the church held land for decades, watching its value multiply as populations grew and infrastructure expanded. Railroad construction changed everything. When the Transcontinental Railroad reached Utah in the 1860s, Mormon territory suddenly became valuable real estate. The church had positioned itself perfectly, owning vast tracts along the most important transportation corridor in the American West. They didn't just benefit from increased land values, they became partners with railroad companies, supplying materials, labor, and services that generated enormous profits. But here's where the Mormon approach differed from typical American capitalism. Most entrepreneurs built wealth for themselves and their families. Mormon leaders built wealth for an institution that would outlast any individual lifetime. Every successful venture strengthened the church's financial foundation, creating a compound effect that accelerated with each generation. The church also mastered something that modern corporations spend billions trying to achieve: brand loyalty. Mormon consumers preferred Mormon products, Mormon services, and Mormon businesses. This wasn't just religious preference, it was economic nationalism. Money spent within the community stayed within the community, multiplying its impact and strengthening the entire system. Non-Mormon competitors found themselves fighting not just individual businesses, but an entire ecosystem designed to support its own members. As Utah territory grew into statehood, Mormon economic influence expanded beyond religious communities. The church invested in mining operations that extracted copper, silver, and gold from mountain deposits. They built factories that processed raw materials into finished goods. They established banks that financed both Mormon and non-Mormon enterprises, earning interest and building relationships with powerful business leaders across the region. The 20th century brought new opportunities and new challenges. As America industrialized, the church adapted its strategies without abandoning its principles. They diversified into manufacturing, retail, and eventually technology. But the foundation remained the same: disciplined tithing, strategic investment, and long-term thinking that prioritized institutional growth over individual enrichment. Mormon wealth also benefited from something that secular businesses couldn't replicate: missionary work. Every young Mormon man was expected to spend 2 years spreading the faith, often in foreign countries. But these missions did more than convert souls. They created global networks of relationships, business contacts, and investment opportunities. Mormon missionaries returned home with knowledge of international markets, foreign languages, and cultural insights that proved invaluable in building multinational enterprises. The church's tax-exempt status provided another crucial advantage. While competitors paid corporate taxes on their profits, Mormon enterprises could reinvest every dollar into expansion and development. This tax shield allowed the church to accumulate wealth at rates that private businesses simply couldn't match, compounding their advantages over time. Modern Mormon wealth reflects this centuries-long strategy. The church's investment portfolio spans every major asset class: stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities, and private equity. Their property holdings include shopping centers in major metropolitan areas, office buildings in financial districts, and agricultural operations that span multiple states. They own media companies, insurance firms, and educational institutions that generate revenue while advancing church interests. But the most impressive aspect isn't the size of Mormon wealth, it's the sophistication of its management. The church operates investment funds with the discipline of institutional managers, diversifying across markets and geographies to minimize risk while maximizing returns. They employ teams of financial professionals who apply cutting-edge strategies to protect and grow assets that now influence entire economic sectors. This isn't accidental prosperity. It's the result of a systematic approach to wealth building that began with Joseph Smith's revelations and evolved through nearly 2 centuries of disciplined execution. Every dollar donated by faithful members becomes part of a machine designed to generate more dollars, creating a perpetual cycle of growth that shows no signs of slowing. The implications extend far beyond religious boundaries. Mormon wealth influences politics, shapes communities, and affects markets in ways that most Americans never recognize. When you shop at certain malls, invest in particular funds, or consume specific media, you may be contributing to an economic empire built on principles that transform persecution into prosperity. The story of Mormon wealth isn't just about one religion's remarkable success. It's a blueprint for understanding how discipline, long-term vision, and systematic execution can transform any organization from weakness into dominance. From Joseph Smith's tithing commandments to Brigham Young's desert empire to today's global investment machine, the pattern is clear. Those who build wealth methodically, patiently, and relentlessly will inherit the future. But here's what should wake you up. While most Americans chase quick profits, instant gratification, and short-term gains, the Mormon Church has spent nearly 2 centuries playing a different game entirely. They understood that true wealth isn't about what you earn today, it's about what you build for tomorrow. And tomorrow's wealth is always built on today's sacrifice, today's discipline, and today's unwavering commitment to principles that compound over generations. The richest religion in America didn't get rich by accident. They got rich by design. And if you think their story is over, you're wrong. Every Sunday, millions more dollars flow into a system that has turned faith into the most powerful wealth-building machine in American history. The question isn't whether they'll keep growing. The question is whether you'll learn from what they built.